One of the most difficult elements of mixing metal is to ensure consistency with the kick drum, as too much clipping or compression can make the kick distort in a pretty unpleasant way. A lot of the time we can use samples to help, but what if you want to use the natural kick? Well, if you're a Reaper user, you're in luck, because in this clip, Adair shows you how to very quickly normalize each individual kick hit so you can get a really natural and consistent kick sound. Check it out.
I needed to use the acoustic sound because I wanted this mix to sound really natural because of the Holy Land thing I told you. So I didn't want to use samples, and I was like, well, I need the bass drum to be a lot more solid, let's say, you know. How can I do that without using a clipper or a limiter, you know, because it sounds bad, you know. So basically on Reaper, you can like normalize things like this, you know, like extending the signal to 0, you know, like this, you know. So I did this in the entire bass drum track. I'm normalizing each one of the hits, you know, sending them to 0 dB. That makes a lot easier for some people who struggle using the acoustic sound of the drums. That's going to be really useful. But of course, I don't go like one by one. There's a trick, you know. After I create the MIDI track and then creating the click track of the click track version of the bass drum here, after I do that, I know for sure that for each one of the bass drum hits, I have a click track, a click sound perfectly synced to the bass drum. So I do this. Like on Reaper, you have this feature where I can group both tracks, and then whatever I do in this track, the click track here, whatever I do here, it's going to happen on the track below. So if I cut, both tracks will be cut. Okay. So then what I do, Reaper has this option where dynamic split items, where it will automatically select, read all the click track, the bass drum click track version of the bass drum, and I can cut all of them at once like this. And obviously automatically it will cut the entire bass drum track, the original one. And Reaper has this option where I can select all the clips that were created, and I hit like Shift Command N, and it will normalize all the notes. Then basically imagine what's happening here. It's like I have each one of the bass drum hits pushed to 0 dB. So all of them are equal. So it's a way to kind of limit the track without having to deal with the issues that comes when you try to either clip the track or limit the track. Because there's also another thing, which is, let's say, a compressor to even the notes out. I'm using a compressor on the bass drum, but really lightly, you know, and with the release really short, because this is a way to have all the notes a lot more clear in your face without having to use limiter or clipping. Because one of the problems you have with the compressor is that if you have a lot of notes in a sequence like this, like what happens if you have a lot of compression trying to even the notes? The first note is going to be really loud and really clear, but the second one, the third, the fourth, it's going to be really bad, you know, because the compressor is still acting, you know, still being applied to the track, you know. So this is a really nice trick to have all the notes even in the mix, and it's going to be a lot easier to use the acoustic sound. You can do that on toms, you know. For example, I don't recommend using the snare. On toms is going to be a little bit more tricky because the bleed from the other pieces, it's a lot more prominent than in the bass drum. So that was the trick. Like I saw some guys sending me messages, like especially Fernando. He was one of the guys that he was asking me on Instagram, like about this thing, you know. And basically it's a really nice trick to use the acoustic bass drum sound on the final mix.